Well, for more on that topic, I'm joined live from Singapore by Jamrisko, Southeast Asia economy reporter at Bloomberg News. So let's start with the background. Give us an idea of the metrics used to determine these rankings.
Sure. Well, the Bloomberg Innovation Index was created by my colleague in New York, Wei Lu, and it's based on 7 different categories. I can just tick them through them right now. It's R&D, value-added manufacturing, productivity, high-tech density, higher education efficiency, researcher concentration, and patent activity. So based on organizations' data, international organizations' data on each of these categories, we were able to kind of rank these economies as we do year to year. And China, as you mentioned, did perform very well this year.
So you mentioned China. Talk about what was the biggest driver in pushing China's rise up the index.
Sure. Well, this year they did gain in, I think, 5 of the 7 categories. Most notably, I would point out, is the #2 ranking in patent activity. Patent activity really kind of moved a lot of economies this year. You mentioned the U.S. In this category, we measure things like resident patent filings, total patent grants, filing growth. And China performed very well, moved up to #2 from #6 last year. So that is their really star performance in terms of categories. But other areas, and it should be no surprise, R&D and researcher concentration, China performs very well. Certainly a priority of this administration and something that they've been focused on for some time. Other things I would point out is high-tech density. That's a category where we look at very forward-thinking industries like aerospace, biotech, obviously some priorities in Made in China 2025, so that matches up well. And lastly, I would just point out the tertiary efficiency category. That's where we look at higher education, STEM graduates, and how they're matched up to jobs. Certainly a lot of students going abroad from China to get those degrees and then coming back home and using that in the domestic economy. So that's helping China's ranking as well.
Now, the U.S. dropped out of the top 10 list the year before, but made it back in this year. What were its biggest strengths, and how sustainable is that momentum?
Yes. Well, I would think that there's a few different categories that the U.S. did well. I'm just looking at the list right now. Tertiary efficiency is a weakness, but they are #1 in patent activity. So the U.S. does have that crown to hold on to. So I think that kind of points to some of the IP and other issues that they kind of try to move forward, trying to loosen regulation. Of course, Silicon Valley always says that they could do better, but that's certainly a strength. And there's a lot of researcher concentration, of course, attracting these folks from all over the world, so they perform well in that category. High-tech density, there is an emphasis, sure, on some of these faster-paced industries. So those are the things that could be sustainable. But, it is hard, especially when you get into the top 10 in this ranking, to retain that ranking. We saw South Korea this year, which has gained in previous years and has taken the crown for 6 years in a row, did slip this year actually, and is close to losing that #1 ranking to Germany. So we'll see how that things go. But as I said, a very competitive index. A lot of economies improving their scores this year, but not necessarily improving their rankings. So it was notable that China moved up 3 spots.